Honoring the 3 Ohio National Guard airmen who died in service of our country. Ahead on Face the State.
They were in the National Guard not for fame, not for fortune, but because they always felt ready to be called on to protect and defend our great nation.
On the floor of the Senate at the Dover Air Force Base by the President, and here in Central Ohio at their home base, the tributes to these home state heroes. Also, a second chance at rebuilding their lives. 4 stories of resilience and redemption through the governor's Expedited Pardon Project. How their pardons are helping them achieve their dreams and why they hope more people like them knew about the opportunity. Plus, for many sports fans, this is the greatest time of the year. For others, March Madness can be a tempting time that leads to big financial problems. We'll look at problem gambling in Ohio and ways to avoid the betting pitfalls. Face the State starts now. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. 3 Ohio heroes returned to the United States this past week. A dignified transfer of Captain Seth Koval, Captain Curtis Angst, and Master Sergeant Tyler Simmons was held Wednesday at Dover Air Force Base in the state of Delaware. All 6 airmen who were killed when their KC-135 Stratotanker crashed in Iraq last week are now back in the United States. Families asked that solemn ceremony be private. No media was allowed. These photos were shared by the White House's X account. Those in attendance included President Donald Trump, Ohio's U.S. Senators Bernie Moreno and John Husted, and Governor Mike DeWine and First Lady Fran DeWine. 3 other U.S. service members were killed in the refueling crash and were part of the dignified transfer. Major John Klinner, Captain Ariana Savino, and Tech Sergeant Ashley Pruitt. They were assigned to the 6th Air Refueling Wing in Florida. On Tuesday night, both Senators Moreno and Husted honored the 3 Ohio airmen with speeches on the Senate floor.
These 3 Ohioans were the most courageous and selfless individuals of our great nation. They were in the National Guard not for fame, not for fortune, but because they always felt ready to be called on to protect and defend our great nation. As distinguished members of Ohio's National Guard, they answered that call that their unit was activated. They didn't hesitate, they didn't doubt, they didn't worry. They were ready to go and serve, not for themselves, for all of us.
Mr. President, these service members, alongside their 3 other brothers and sisters in arms, gave the last full measure of devotion to their country last week. I thank my colleagues for hearing their stories this evening, for honoring their service, and for celebrating their lives, and for mourning their loss alongside a grateful nation.
Senators Moreno and Husted later introduced a resolution in the Senate honoring the 3 airmen from Ohio. The resolution starts by saying the Senate, quote, honors the lives, service, and sacrifice of the Ohio Air National Guard airmen from the 121st Air Refueling Wing who were killed in the Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker crash in Iraq during Operation Epic Fury. It goes on to say the Senate expresses its condolences to the families, friends, and fellow service members, recognizes the role of the 121st Air Refueling Wing, and affirms the people of the United States will always remember these brave airmen and remain grateful for their service. 10 TV Stacia Ken has been covering this story very closely since the beginning. And Stacia, you recently went to Rickenbacker Air National Guard Base, home of the 121st Air Refueling Wing, and you talked to the Major General there. How are they dealing with this loss at a time when they do have important jobs to do?
They do. And I've spent a lot of time with the 121st over the last decade, and they're so proud of the work that they do. This is a heavy time, and I was really struck being there this week by the heaviness of the spirit there. The spirit carries on for the work that they have to do. These are highly skilled airmen, each one of them. And I'm always amazed at the concept of a gas station in the sky. It's so important to continue the work of the U.S. military without gas in our skyways, the mission can't continue. They can't fly where they need to go, any U.S. military aircraft. And that's what the 121st does. They bring fuel everywhere. But the job is so dangerous. It's so specific in the way they perform their duties. They make it look easy, but it's not. And that's something that is important to remember. And I heard that from the Major General when I had a chance to talk with him about this work. Is there such thing as a routine mission?
There isn't. It's a dangerous job, but because we train so rigorously, because we have such great talent, the job can appear routine. I assure you it is not. And then we add a complexity of combat on top of what would appear to be routine. It's a very difficult environment that they're operating in. And yet, they raise their hand and say, I want to do it.
You can hear the emotion in his voice there. And did the general talk about the character of these service members?
You know what? It's so powerful to think about the fewer than 1% who will raise their hand to say they want to serve their country. Less than 1% of the people in our country will do that. This is a very special group who do it within the National Guard. They serve here at home. They serve across the world in this specific wing. And I always think about it in terms of the way you and I, we love our work, but it's different. We don't raise our right hand to say we want to do this. We don't raise our hand and swear an oath to serve our country. There is a different passion. There's a different calling when we are talking about our service members and the way they show up for our communities and show up for our country.
So how do they keep their focus and going forward with the mission?
I think it goes back to that passion that they have to serve. That calling is real, and that calling means more than just showing up to work. This is not a 9 to 5, and I know we think about the National Guard, and the General speaks to that, where talking about the National Guard, maybe people have an idea that this is a weekend force. No, it's not like that. The 121st, they serve every single day all over the world, and there is a passion here that is very, very special.
And he addressed that.
How do you move this mission forward with the heaviness of this moment?
The airmen do it. It doesn't require me to do anything. They do it. So the location where these airmen were flying out of, they took a knee for a day. The first airplane airborne was the 121st, the day after. I can't imagine that courage, that strength, but we build resiliency. That's what we try to do. It's difficult in these challenging times, but we have heroes. That's how it happens.
So you hear the emotion, you hear the passion in his voice talking about the loss of these three heroes, really.
And we will continue to follow the process of bringing them home to Ohio. We'll have updates on that.
Stacia, great coverage. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, still ahead on Face the State, the governor's Expedited Pardon Project.
Without this program, where do you think you would be in life?
Not a real estate agent or a notary, for a fact.
They paid for their crimes, and now they're getting a new lease on life with that cloud no longer over their heads. And next, during the big dance, some people take big chances. When does a little betting turn into a gambling problem? As the popularity of sports betting booms, we look at the trends in Ohio, how to avoid the pitfalls, and the help that's out there to keep you from losing big. March Madness is an exciting time for hardcore sports fans, but also for more casual fans. A time to cheer on your favorite teams, bet on which teams you think will win, or both. Most do it responsibly. Some get in over their heads, and the popularity of sports betting is growing. The American Gaming Association estimates roughly $3.3 billion will be legally bet on the 2026 NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments. Sports betting has been very popular in Ohio since it became legal in January of 2023. The Ohio Casino Control Commission reports people wagered $10.3 billion on sports in the state in 2025. The American Gaming Association also says Ohio ranks 4th in the nation for sports betting, behind only New York, Illinois, and New Jersey. March also happens to be Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and here to talk about gaming in Ohio and responsible gambling is Derek Longmire. He's the Executive Director of the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio. Derek, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure, thank you.
So first of all, with the tournament underway, what are you expecting in terms of betting in Ohio this right now?
Well, if you said Ohio is a big betting state, and we expect a lot of betting action during these times, really starting with the Super Bowl, and then we had the Olympics, and now the March Madness is kind of finalizing the sports betting season.
And the Super Bowl, I understand, is the biggest single event.
Biggest single event, but overall more betting happening in March Madness than in the Super Bowl.
Overall, okay. As I mentioned, the sports betting started here in 2023. So what does problem gambling look like here now, since that started? Did it just kind of explode, or has it been a trickle?
The landscape has completely changed. Now you're able to bet on your phone 24/7, 365, and that's not something that's been available before. So Ohioans just like sports betting in general, but really looking at that mobile element has really led to a lot of engagement. And we know, based on calls to the Ohio Problem Gambling Helpline, calls to our office, and the increase in clients that we've seen, as well as Google searches for gambling help in Ohio, that there's a greater number of people that are reaching out for help.
Do you have numbers on that, or is it just kind of anecdotal?
No, we do. Every month we get reports to show kind of what those numbers look like. And the first month after sports betting went live, we saw a huge spike, and those numbers, while it curtailed a little bit from there, continue to be much higher than the previous sports betting calls.
So do we have a big problem with problem gambling in Ohio right now?
Based on our most recent statewide survey that was conducted in 2022, 1 in 5 Ohio adults are at risk for developing a gambling problem, and that was before sports betting was legalized. So we expect that number to have even grown from there. We're still waiting on the most recent survey to see kind of what that impact has been.
Is one of the big issues now that it is just right there in a person's hand? They can do all of this on their phone?
Access, availability, and acceptability are kind of those three elements. So available 24/7, you don't have to go anywhere now, and just the kind of the shift in acceptability related to gambling in general, but also specifically sports betting, that just more people are doing it, and just society is really supporting more activity.
The stigma is gone.
Very much so. And I look at a silver lining there, because if the stigma is gone, then hopefully so is the stigma for reaching out for help. And I think that's also leading to the increased calls that we're receiving. People are being more greatly impacted, but also they know that there's support available.
We see for a while now, we've seen sports betting platforms such as FanDuel, DraftKings, but now we're hearing about prediction markets. First of all, what are those?
So prediction markets are outside of what you would normally see as a sports betting option, and this is regulated not by the Ohio Casino Control Commission like sports betting is in Ohio, but federally regulated by the CFTC, and they don't meet the same regulatory requirements that the Casino Control Commission would require, such as making sure that the Ohio Problem Gambling Helpline or the national helplines on advertising, dollars to support the impact of those that need gambling support, marketing restrictions on college and university campuses. And not only are the prediction markets being able to be bet on sports, it's for other things as well, like the Golden Globes and most recently the Oscars. And we've seen some recent scandals, most recently related to Venezuela and conflict in Iran, and people betting on them, betting big and winning big, and kind of thinking, well, there's probably some insider information there that people that in the know can really profit from. Those who aren't are going to lose out.
Wow, I mean, you think of gambling in terms of cards and roulette, and then also now sports betting, but I mean actually betting on like world events.
Will Taylor Swift get married this year? You can bet on Kalshi Poly Market today to see whether or not she will.
Wow, okay, that is definitely, and have they become a big problem here already?
Certainly an increasing problem, and also an important thing to note is the age of initiation. So sports betting in Ohio, 21 plus, but through the federal requirements, it's 18 plus. So that's really bringing then betting into high schools, which is, of course, as we know, with alcohol and other things, that can be really challenging.
What kind of trends are you seeing? You might think that it would mostly affect men, but is it going outside of that scope?
Specifically to sports betting, it really is males 18 to 35 is kind of that prime number. But as we're looking at calls to the Ohio Problem Gambling Helpline, the age at which people are calling is becoming younger, and the duration of problems with gambling that they've had has been shrinking as well. So people are calling younger and sooner, which at least the sooner standpoint lets us know that they're reaching out, hopefully sooner. Looking at the other elements, is just, I think, speaks to kind of the cultural shift. But again, help is available and people are accessing it.
What are signs that maybe someone could recognize in themselves or someone they love or know to realize that there may be a gambling problem?
For the individual gambler, really asking yourself, is this still fun? As we're looking at gambling, it should be an entertainment activity, just like going to a movie. And if you're doing it and you're no longer having fun, well, that should be a pretty big sign to say, maybe I need to rethink that. Also, really being able to set and stick to limits, and limits not only of the dollars spent, but also of time spent. And especially as we're looking at March Madness now, there's a lot of games that are happening, and you really get caught up in that and lose a lot of time. Certainly looking at implications on the workplace as well, as these games are happening and maybe not being as productive as you should be.
And you have the pause before you play campaign. What's the big message right there?
Big message is in the campaign itself. And before you take that first bet or make that next bet, take a moment, pause, do your due diligence. Right now we have 18 different sports books that are regulated by the Casino Control Commission, all mobily. So if you don't like the odds on FanDuel, then you can pop over to DraftKings, BetMGM, or one of the 15 others. So that's also a lot harder to keep track of how much you're spending and how much time's going on there when you're flipping around. So really setting those limits, being prepared before you start, and kind of knowing what the odds are.
And you have a campaign that's also directed at younger people as well, right?
Yes, Change the Game Ohio is really focused on young people and the evolution between video gaming and gambling. A lot of video games have elements of gambling within them, such as loot boxes, where for a mere 99 cents you can get this mysterious box that might have something amazing. Now it's all digital, so it's not real, but what they may perceive as amazing or something that's not that great. All elements of gambling that can really prime that young person for wanting to feel those same effects and engage in other forms of gambling later in life.
And you talk about the helpline, and I'll have the number here in just a little bit, but can people get help through the Problem Gambling Network?
Through Problem Gambling Network of Ohio, we provide clinical services through the Ohio Gambling Telehealth Network, and we also we say network is the most important part of our name. We network with behavioral health providers throughout the state. So if you're looking for individual therapy, group therapy, those are available. And that's elements that are important, but also other things that people might say, I'm not really ready for counseling, but would be more open to other forms of help. So that could be limit setting tools through GamFin or GamBan. GamFin talks about gambling and financial literacy because there's a big financial impact. So there's a lot of resources available, and the Ohio Problem Gambling Helpline, going to pausebeforeyouplay.org, great places to start to figure out what resources are available.
It's good to hear, too, that the people are reaching out, that it's not something that people are doing kind of in the shadows now and reaching out for that help. So, Derek, thank you so much for your time and perspective on this issue as sports betting grows here in Ohio.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And if you or someone you know has a problem with gambling, you can call the Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-589-9966 or text 988. If you'd like more information, check out the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio's website at pgnohio.org or pausebeforeyouplay.org. There are resources to help you. Still ahead on Face the State, a chance at redemption that not many people know about. How the governor's Expedited Pardon Project helped 4 people we met get their lives started again after mistakes years ago. When Ohio Governor Mike DeWine leaves office next year, he will have pardoned more Ohioans with felony records than any governor before him. A total of 338 people have received pardons under Governor DeWine, 287 of those under his Expedited pardon project that started 6 years ago. 10 TV's Kevin Landers talked with those who received pardons and the governor about what happens to his program when he leaves office.
I never knew how to deal with anger.
Their stories.
When I got charged with burglary, me and some friends, we made a bad decision.
Are deeply personal.
When I turned 18, my life was in a downward spiral.
I suffered a lot of trauma as a kid, and I started using drugs.
Their mistakes of the past.
I chose the life that was handed at me. Drugs, alcohol, wickedness, destruction.
Nearly derailed their futures.
I did 2 years. They gave me 5 years probation.
I decided one night to try to commit suicide by cop. I walked up to an officer while I was intoxicated and tried to take his gun.
So I was in prison. I got on my knees and I was like, God, what do you want me to do?
Their decisions left them with felony records.
It haunted me for over 20 years.
So this felony conviction was like
a cloud over my life.
that felony was inescapable.
Yeah.
They needed help.
Do you feel redeemed?
Yes, I do.
And there it is.
There it is, there it is.
In February of 2024, Mike Justice received his official pardon, allowing him to move beyond his prison photo to become a parole officer.
It was exhilarating. It was, I felt invigorated.
He says it took several months to get approved. Michelle Orr says she waited 3 years.
Without this program, where do you think you would be in life?
Not a real estate agent or a notary for a fact.
There's everything right there that I need.
Donovan Robinson waited 2 years for his pardon before it arrived in December of last year.
Just to have that barrier lifted is like basically a fresh breath of new beginnings.
Every person we interviewed,
The state didn't send me no notification or anything.
told us the same story. They had no idea the Expedited Pardon Project existed.
And then I'm Googling expungements and came across Mike DeWine's Pardon Project, and I was just like, well, what's this?
Michelle Orr is calling on the state to create a notification program.
Somebody should reach out to people to see when they hit that 10-year mark.
Under the law, they must live crime-free for 10 years to apply for a pardon. I asked Governor Mike DeWine about concerns over lack of notifications.
Are you aware of this criticism, and do you think the program needs to do a better job of informing people about this?
Well, I think the best way to inform them, quite candidly, is through you all.
As for people like Donovan Robinson,
I want to be an inspiration to my kids.
he hopes to use his new freedom to become a firefighter or a 911 dispatcher. Chris Farrell's pardon gave him the opportunity to find a home.
My wife was in tears. We finally got a place to live. We found somebody that would rent to us.
He's now a substance abuse counselor. All of them
It feels like redemption.
have an attitude of gratitude.
If you could go back in time and talk to the 19-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Make better choices.
The Expedited Pardon Project ends when Governor DeWine leaves office, so its future remains unclear. We asked the leading candidates for governor for their stances on the program. Vivek Ramaswamy's spokesperson told us he's open to reviewing this program more closely and examining its impact once in office. Through a spokesperson, Dr. Amy Acton said, "I will conduct a thorough review of Governor DeWine's Expedited Pardon Program to make sure it is achieving those goals." We have the full statements from the current candidates for governor for you to check out. You can read those in Kevin Landers' story on 10tv.com. And that's all of our time for today. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you next Sunday at 11:30. Have a great day.